Hey, what's up, Candy Ken? What's up, Baby J? How's it going?
Not today.
Candy Ken and Baby J. It's Candy Ken.
Welcome to the Candy Ken Show.
All right, everybody. We are back on the Candy Ken Show, and I am very excited. We have something really fun coming up. We got, and I'm wearing my Grillz. I don't know if you guys can notice, but we got the master of the Grillz, so to speak, the grill master, the one and only Alligator Jesus in the house.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for making time. And also, we have the CEO and founder of Creators Inc. In the house. Andy is here, and he's responsible for us all sitting here. So thank you so much, Andy.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me on.
Of course, I'm very excited. And man, if you are looking to get the Grillz or any kind of jewelry, this is the man. If you're interested in gold and diamonds and the good life, this will answer all your questions. I always get my Grillz, and I have veneers and grills on top. So this man can not only get you grilled up, he can also get you grilled up over veneers or whatever you need. Vampire fangs. I mean, you do it all.
Oh, yeah.
And you do it for the craziest of clients. He has Madonna. He has Kanye. He gets called up when we need the best of the best.
Oh, yeah.
So let's dive into it. Like, when did you start, and how did you always wanted to be a jeweler, or what happened?
Actually, well, I started a long time ago. I've got over 2 decades now in making jewelry, but I started as a photographer in Miami. And both my parents were artists and then became teachers. My dad at a college level, my mom elementary. And photography, it was my thing. I'm even wearing my camera today because it's my daily shooter. But it was years and years of being in the darkroom that developed like an allergic reaction to the chemistry, and I had to get out of photography. And I took up the hobby of mine more seriously, which was jewelry making. I had done sculpture my whole life, but jewelry, small metals, and I treated jewelry like small sculptures. I thought it was really interesting to just like simplify and like miniaturize all the same skills on like a massive level to make these little intricate things. And I mean, yeah, that was over 20 years ago when I started taking courses in college, and I wanted to learn the right way of doing jewelry, because I knew kids in middle school and high school that were making grills, but they were like the cool kids. And I wondered, how did they have so much gold and jewelry like when we were just like little kids? It was because they were breaking into houses and robbing people at malls. And I didn't want to learn that way of doing jewelry, the street way. So I picked up the skills in college to do jewelry professionally. And a lot of what I learned in college is still what I do today.
That's crazy. I started with photography too, actually. So before Candy Ken, I used to be a photographer because I was too scared to be in front of the lens. And with getting to know more rappers and celebrities, I was like, wow, they have no vision, they're not creative, and there's people behind them who pull all the strings and set together those music videos. And I was like, wow, if they can do it, I can definitely do it. And then I met you.
Yeah.
And you didn't do like what you've accomplished in those 7 years I've known you.
Yeah.
Is incredible. And yeah, this is so beautiful that like if you don't give up and you follow your passion, you can always make it, and you can always make a name for yourself if you deliver the quality.
Oh, yeah.
And the passion. And I think this is where you set yourself apart from other jewelry and other grill maker who just want the quick money.
Yeah.
And because you're really passionate about your products, and the work speaks for itself, kind of.
You know, I think everyone, when they meet me, that's one of the first things they instantly say is like, oh, you're passionate about this. You really, they sit with me for a minute and they realize this isn't just some guy trying to hustle, pull one over. This is like, I don't care about the money. It's cliche to say, but it's like, I want a creative project and to work with someone and to make something that's catered and designed specifically for the person that's going to wear it. It should be an extension of themselves. It should be something that they never want to take off. I mean, you're, like you said, the grills over your veneers, your teeth, your smile becomes a part of your personality. So if I could accentuate that a little bit, make people smile a little bit more, they're even more welcoming and receptive to an even larger audience because they're just look happy. Happiness is infectious. It's like this like really great way to get more people to respond to you in a positive way if you've got this really charming smile. So
absolutely, man. I thought always when I get veneers I would like smile more, but like it's always when I have the Grillz, like I really want to smile and like put it in people's faces because I'm like, hey, look at all the gold. and they make a big difference in appearance, how you feel, how you present yourself. I mean, pretty much everything. And how do somebody get from zero to Bad Bunny, like Madonna? Like, what happened? Like,
I'm wearing the glasses right now because I was out till like 4 a.m. last night. And I should say I'm sober. I'm not drinking. I'm not using drugs or anything. Never have. And it's going out. And I'll bring it back to being in college, where I was in the dark room and I was a photographer and doing jewelry and sculpture. And I had a lot of these really cool artists that were in my network, but they all knew me through school and they didn't see me out ever. And there was one artist in particular who at the time had a show at the Museum of Contemporary Art, like 3 gallery shows in Miami, a big show in New York, and he was really taking off. And he would tell me regularly, David, you're my favorite artist. But if I go out to a show and people ask me something like that and I say my favorite artist is David Tamargo, people would say, who the fuck is that? Because I wasn't out. And he really encouraged me to go out, make some mistakes, get to know people, be a part of the culture and be a part of the scene. And that's how I've networked my way up and stumbled up into getting phone calls from huge celebrities now, is because I know they're people. As you said, there's a team behind every big successful artist. There's like dozens, if not hundreds of people that have helped them along the way to get there. And if you go out there and you're with the people that help make those crazy things happen in culture, you're going to be the one that they call. And it's always been through a network of people. People have always introduced me to people, because I'm not trying to go to like, I do now, but I'm not always trying to go to like GQ events or Vogue events. And I'm not on like red carpets all the time. And I'm not doing those kind of things because there's a level of performative nature to that. I'd rather like a more relaxed, simple introduction to people. I want to be like this, sitting on a couch or in a living room with people, or at a nice bar where you can sit and have a conversation with people.
I was super eager to jump at the invitation to sit in with you.
Yeah.
Because you've been in business for 20 years.
Yeah.
And usually when dealing with a lot of younger creators and a lot of entrepreneurs, they think something's going to happen in 20 minutes.
Oh, man.
So 20 years, it's a good amount of data.
Yeah.
Let's review. What do you think are some of the highlights over those last 20 years that obviously in your early stages, I'm sure you set out some way and there was a lot of time spent learning lessons and,
oh yeah.
But what stands out are some of like the real highlights that helped you hit that tipping point? You know, maybe it could have been that one picture with a Bad Bunny or a top celebrity that people looked at and said, wow, this guy's credible. I want to come to him. But really think about that moment, because I'll just chime in from my experience. When you try to promote yourself, sometimes you can spend a lot of money and waste a lot of money trying to accomplish something. And then boom, all of a sudden you run into Bad Bunny, but you know, in a parking lot or backstage 1 second, you have your phone on him and he really takes a picture with you that shows social proof that he knows you, he fucks with you, he works with you. And then boom, something like that. Like what comes to mind over the last 20 years?
Insane Clown Posse. Hands down, it was me being a juggalo, and it sounds so surreal to like go from Bad Bunny, Madonna's and Kanye's and stuff to bring it all the way back down to like what is still known as the underground of music in America. Insane Clown Posse is what I have to thank for my success, because I was part of a community of juggalos that really supported me and helped me learn the hardest lessons of all in this business, because it was just a surprise being backstage at a show 7 years ago, I believe. And the manager for the band, for the group, came up to me and says, hey, you're that kid that we knew, 15 years ago. You were doing website stuff and whatever. I hear you're a jeweler now. Can you make jewelry for us? And I started making the jewelry for the fans that are juggalos. And it's really a symbol of being a part of a community. Like,
I'm glad you clarified that. So Insane Clown Posse, the band, the people, their fans are known as the Juggalos?
Yes.
Okay. A lot of people don't know that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Juggalos are probably the most diehard fan group. I mean, you talked about Taylor Swift fans and everything. They got nothing on the Juggalos. Those fans live, breathe, eat, and sleep Insane Clown Posse. And being like like the check of approval and being put on by the band themselves is what gave me the motivation, because growing up, those were like my heroes. And that was the group that I really looked up to. And I went to the first 8 gathering of the Juggalos. And growing up, my father being a professor, we had the internet when it was still learning electronic mail and the new language HTML. And I was making websites for ICP for my fandom. And it was like just part of my story to grow up and be so involved with that community, like it so much, to then be asked by them at a time when things weren't working out for me creatively. And I should backtrack in saying that, like, I tried out in doing film, was photographer, like I tried being a curator, an art director for museums. I tried all these art adjacent things, and all the while was always just doing my jewelry as a hobby for those 20 years. And then it wasn't until my big break of Insane Clown Posse putting in an order for, like, I think it was just 100 pieces to sell at an event, and those things sold in like seconds. What was the order? Tell us about that specific SKU. It was the classic symbol of being a fan, which is the logo of their record label, which is a hatchet man. It's a man with dreadlocks running with a hatchet. We've all kind of known that symbol. It's such a good IP. And that symbol hadn't been used by them for about 10 years to make jewelry. I learned later that they had burned every jeweler they ever worked with, and soon later me. But I really brought more life into the community by giving the fans what they were lacking, was someone making it from the perspective of being like a diehard true fan. And that was a pendant? Yeah, it was a pendant. Okay. It's just a silver pendant. So you made a silver pendant. Do you remember what your price point was on those? What did you sell them for? I sold them, I think, they sold them for $200 or $250, and those cost me, well, we'll just say numbers. It cost me about $55 to $65 to make. And you sold it to them wholesale? I sold it to them wholesale. Got it. Yeah. And so, you had your target market, and it was like candy to a baby. I was like, literally like, guys, just double your money. This is jewelry. The market is different. You haven't been in the jewelry world for a while. Metals have gone up. Costs of labor in America have gone up, and you're not putting in an order. They don't have the huge fan base now at this point than they did 10 years or 15 years prior. They had this whole legal issue with the FBI classifying the fans as a gang, as a loosely connected gang, for terrible reasons. Like, it was really, they fought it legally for a long time, and they had kind of gone a downward spiral because they lost all their deals with like Hot Topic and TJ Maxx and Walmart, their merchandise, their music, everything. Imagine like having a Candy Ken fan base of like hundreds of thousands, and then if anyone's wearing a unicorn Candy Ken shirt, you're all of a sudden deemed a gang member. And people were losing their jobs, losing their custody of their kids, because in, divorces, spouses would say, oh, they're a part of a gang. They're fans of this music. And it was a really bad precedent in America for fans of a specific genre of music to be labeled and ostracized so terribly, like as a gang member, as a criminal. And, especially with the battles that hip hop have undergone, we're right now seeing the 50-year anniversary of hip hop, and we're seeing all this celebration of hip hop. Yet, it's the pioneers of that industry that have really suffered all the years of not getting their credit and not making the big bucks, because it was really tough. And it was like, even to this day, I'm still battling the perception of Grillz as like this rapper or this gangster like jewelry piece, when most of my clientele are over 50% women, and like surprisingly more than 50% over the age of 30. So it's really unique that we're at this point now. And to bring it back to ICP, like they had suffered and been kicked down, and I was a part of the rejuvenation of their fandom and the comeback that they're experiencing right now. So I'm going to make a prejudiced guess. Correct me where I'm wrong here. So I'm guessing they had, one of their homies who was in charge of kind of some sort of business management, who was dealing with the money they were supposed to be collecting from merchandise or their IP, instead of someone with like an MBA or like a serious professional. And you were dealing with that person. Oh yeah. And, they just weren't great about
fronting the cash, or you had to go chasing them for it, and it eventually became not such a great business opportunity.
Absolutely. That's exactly it. The check was in the mail, and then check in the mail, and check your mail, and we sent it out, and then the check never came, and they got thug with me, and I just cut ties. I figured it would be better to cut my losses and walk away than to pursue them legally. I mean, it was just like not worth it.
That happens a lot in the entertainment business, but I hope what you got from that was that picture with your arm wrapped around ICP that the next customers.
It did. That was that photo. They put me on. There was an event one Christmas. They have the Big Ball as a Christmas party where they invite the fans into their studio and into their warehouse and everything, and they sat up on a stage, and it was kind of like a one-on-one with the fans where they weren't rapping, but they were sitting in chairs singing a cappella and just telling stories and whatnot. It was really cool. And there was a big moment where they shouted me out, and it kind of solidified me and validated me in the history of what they were doing. And they acknowledged me, really. It was really like that validating moment, and then I was out. After that, I helped them out a little bit more, and then I was like, all right, I got to get out of this, because that is not going to pay the bills and not going to pay my vendors that I'm buying raw materials of silver and gold from. I can't pay people with clout. So.
Interesting. So, something you just said, here's what my brain just said. The reason you got so close to them was probably because you were so legitimate. You were part of their tribe.
Yeah.
And they smelled that, and you got to get close to it and had that business opportunity.
Yeah.
However, what you realized looking back on it now is you probably could have saved yourself a lot of time seeing that situation as a rose with thorns.
Yeah.
You could have gotten what you needed, which was the social proof, and gotten the hell out. However, I think that the tricky part of somebody listening to that lesson is you would have never got as close as you did unless you were actually legit.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to take that shortcut sometimes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But cut your losses when you realize it's time to, right?
Absolutely. And money's imaginary. So people will make $100 million and lose $100 million, and nothing changed about them physically. Maybe chemically in their brain, the stress cortisol is raised, but money does not make you. So if you're a true and honest person and you're doing things with your truth, you're going to always have that and carry that into the next endeavor, into the next project. So you have to always be ready to pivot. And I alluded to working in film and working in all these other artistic industries, and it was, another pivotal moment in bringing me to where I was making more jewelry. I guess there's a couple. There's one that happened in 2010 when I was art director at a museum, and I was taking a walk on my lunch break on Miami Beach, and I looked in a pawn shop window, and I said, wow, that looks like a Murakami. Kind of funny. And I'm looking in pawn shops because I love jewelry, and I always look in the window, and I saw what looked like a Takashi Murakami, the Japanese contemporary artist, who at that time was as big as Warhol. He was like the artist. He had shows all over the world. He had just done his Louis Vuitton collaboration. Everyone knew this name. And I go inside the pawn shop just because my curiosity is way too strong. And I look at this ring. It's got a monogram. It's got his signature. It's got the carat weight. It's got the metals all in there engraved on it. And the guy at the pawn shop said $6,000. Now, being in the art world, I just sold a print for $20,000. A print edition of like 500 that it just has a signature. This is platinum and diamonds and gold. $6,000. Okay, I'm taking it. I put my deposit down, and I went upstairs to my museum and called his organization, Kai Kai Kiki. No, I left a message. I spoke to someone, but they were very elusive. The next day, a detective from the Miami Beach Police Department was there. That ring had been stolen from Murakami years prior at Art Basel and had a retail value of $796,000. And it's legally mine. So long story short, I was flown to New York, went to Kai Kai Kiki, handed over the ring, and they unceremoniously said, thank you so much. Please get the fuck out. Damn. And no meeting Murakami, no thank you, no money back. I was like, what the hell just went on? Apparently it was like some big insurance thing. Like it had been, already filed for insurance. They received the money.
You paid $6,000. You flew yourself to New York. They took the ring, $0.
$0 back. And I had a friend who worked in journalism at the time kind of dig deeper, find the police report, see there are all these conflicting stories and like little things that didn't make sense. The real story was it had been stolen by a call boy. Murakami is now public about being what he is, homosexual and everything. So it's like, just to save face, they didn't want it to go public. And they were trying to just sweep it under the rug. So I guess down the line, because my friend wrote stories on it about how they had treated me, they reached out to me, apology, flew me out to LA. They connected me with people here in LA. And when I tell you, like, people that opened the doors for you, the Murakami team and people blew the doors off the hinges for me. I got job offers and opportunities here in LA to work with, galleries and artists. And I found myself creative director of a private space here in LA. And I was, now rubbing elbows with Kaz and all these people and Damien Hirst and Jeff Koons. And these were the artists that I was communicating with in their galleries. And we were moving like blue chip art pieces. And I thought that for a long time was my path, be doing the art thing. But I was not from that world. The fine art world is really like a small group of people that manipulate and control these assets that wealthy people exchange. And
who are some of the people that come to mind when you say who's controlling it? The Schnabels and the
Gagosian, like mafia cartel. I mean, however you want to put it. I was working for a very prominent collector who had a very big and cool space here, and she had me like adjacent because she needed a male presence because it's very much a very male dominated world. So she had me working for her, and I was literally just serving champagne at a little dinner party with like the purveyors and the owners of the auction houses, because she was about to do this big sale of all the cherries from her collection, of her fine art collection that she had. And I heard them talking about giving artists their time. And no, he's not gonna blow up right now. We're gonna give him another 4 years. We're gonna give him a couple more shows. And then so-and-so is gonna give him a big show at this museum. And they were orchestrating the next 5 to 10 years of people's careers.
This is amazing. I don't want this to go over anyone's head. So I want to make sure everybody understands exactly what you're talking about. When you're an art dealer, and you've been an art dealer for 10, 20 years, imagine you weren't a jeweler, you were an art dealer. Yeah. And all of a sudden, 20 years go by, and you've worked with a dozen billionaires or maybe 100 millionaires who've not only bought art from you, but have made money from you. Yeah. You've sold them a Rashid Johnson Anxious Man at $175,000. Now it's worth $600,000, and they're going to listen to you. Absolutely. They think that when you say buy X, it's going to go up. Yeah. Now all of a sudden you've got all of these very high net worth individuals. I mean, and art is all subjective, right?
Absolutely.
So,
and a tax write-off.
You take a homeless guy off the street who takes a shit on canvas and says he's the next Damien Hirst, and you sell that story to your, dozen billionaires, and, you've got a zero cost basis on this thing, and they're starting to sell for millions of dollars. Is that essentially what happens in the art world, or am I kind of exaggerating too much?
You've boiled it down to the nugget of what it truly is. And I also learned that, everything was for sale. And even in the industry I work in now, I know that magazine covers are for sale. Editorial, or what they call advertorial, like getting editorial written about whatever product or thing, and it seeming like it's like legitimate journalism or editorial, but it's marketing budgets that are paying for that.
This is so fascinating. I'm so glad I sat in on this because, when you came in and I heard the way you spoke, and, you shared with me that you're going to be 40 soon. I'm 40 years old. Mm-hmm. I knew that you've had history in this space and time to get a lot of shit out of your system. Yeah. And one of the things I'd like to kind of steer you down on a rabbit hole, if it's okay, and, sure, and go back to Bad Bunny and Madonna and all those things if you think that that's what's going to get the views. But one of the things that I have to ask you is that, art and jewelry and all this stuff, it's limbic, right? So what's logic? Logic means if I don't get air, if I don't get food, if I don't get water, I die. Yes. Whether you've got a Rolex or an AP or Chrome Hearts or whatever, you ain't gonna die. Yeah. So that goes into the limbic category. Yeah. It's been very obvious to me in speaking to you that you have a clear sense of being on that wheel and off that wheel, meaning, I think you're probably pretty connected to yourself and you understand human psychology of what sells your stuff and pays the bills, but also the fact that it is a limbic desire.
Absolutely.
And so can you talk about how you play into selling something that's limbic?
Well, I make sure that everyone understands that it doesn't matter if I'm selling something that costs $500,000. If someone walks in through my showroom doors and they've got a $5,000 budget, it's my job as this designer and creator to sell them what they want for that $5,000. I don't want to deal with financing and chasing people. I've dealt with that with like the insane clown posses of the world. I am there as a designer to create to satisfy their needs with what they have to offer. And that's a totally different approach than what people are used to in my field, because they're constantly seeing these things that get sticker shock, or they want to work for something, or they can't afford it. And that feeling is waste of time for me. For me, the most precious thing is time. So I'm not going to let someone waste my time and sink me down a rabbit hole of like designing something crazy if I know that their budget is only going to allow CZ and silver. Then we have to design it for that. Or the limitations of time, which is often the most important thing with what I do. When I get these phone calls from Madonna or Bad Bunny or the Kardashians, they need something in a very short amount of time. And I'm the only jeweler in the world that is creating grills same day. So when Bad Bunny needed his iced out grill, and they gave me a call at 12:30 a.m. just after midnight, and I'm on set of like an underground artist's music video, and I got to go right now. I'll see you guys. I was doing that for fun, about to bring it back to
you already had his molds, or
I brought my book bag with me, and in that book bag I have my mold making materials, and I went straight to the Airbnb mansion where Bad Bunny was. He had a day. His Crocs had just dropped. They sold out in seconds, and he was just getting his hair braided.
And how did he or someone on his team know of you?
The stylist, La Tormenta, Storm. We had met at a party after the Super Bowl when he performed with, during the halftime show. And that entire team from Germany that had created that $150,000 trench coat with all the Swarovski crystals in the shape of a skull. That team was throwing a little celebration party because they charged $150K for that jacket.
So celebrity stylists are good plugs for you in your business.
Absolutely. Celebrity stylists are where it's at. They're the ones that oftentimes decide where they're going to source the stuff that the artist is going to wear. And I've got long-standing, over a decade relationships with these stylists through networking and going out and birthday parties and just being a part of that community. Yeah.
Man, so being in LA is kind of essential, or?
For me, it is. It's not for everyone. I mean, you can really find a niche for yourself and find what your audience is and what your desire is, what your end result is, right? Because if you want to just make money with grills or jewelry, you target one specific audience and you know what their desires are, and you just make that and you serve that purpose. There's a grill maker here in LA named Mr. Bling, and shout out to them. They were one of the first people in Los Angeles selling grills and, being known. You go to the Slauson Super Mall and get your grills there. Well, I heard they just shut down because they didn't adjust with the market. After over 20 years in business, they just closed their flagship location. They have a little small spot right now, and they've got some return customers that they'll cater to, but they're shutting down, and they couldn't keep up with technology. They couldn't keep up with changing trends. They just made one flatline product, and people's demand for higher quality, and partly because of people like me and the advents of technology that we utilize that has really shown that whole industry that you can change, you can adjust. Like they just didn't want to change. They were unwavering in what they offered, and people no longer wanted it.
Yeah, I like that you say that, because as an artist, it's the pivoting.
Yeah.
Like I did Instagram for, 5 years, no success. And when I saw TikTok, I pivoted in seconds and just focused everything on that. And now that podcasts are like how I'm like pivoting again, and like the TikTok thing is kind of over. So as an artist, it's not really fun to create just for yourself. There is something about like an audience and like doing something. If it is the internet or if it is that you stand in the middle of a crowd, you need that like opposite to like drive you and feed your creativity. So I think it's really interesting that you said that to be successful, you need to pivot. Otherwise, you'll just stagnate and there will be nothing after that.
Did you sell any Grillz in 2020 during lockdown?
Funny you should ask. I was the only one selling Grillz in the world for 3 months.
Yeah, he came to my house, took molds at home, and then left and came back the next day and had my Grillz.
It was just such a strange year. Obviously, like I thought the stock market was going to go to shit, and it went through the. I couldn't have timed that any worse. But I'm just, you'd think like, nobody's socializing or partying or going out and showing off their grills, but maybe you sold a shit ton. What happened that year?
So I sat on my thumbs for 2 weeks and watched Tiger King, as everyone else did, right? We all had those first 2 weeks because we thought it was just going to be a 2-week lockdown. After 2 weeks, I was like, oh, hell no. Like my anxiety went through the roof because I have to be creating something. I have to be doing something. And I had clients that were hitting me up asking for Grillz, or they had placed orders because they were online shopping. And I saw a need. All that aforementioned place here in LA no longer was open to the public. So I saw the need for creating this. Well, we saw how COVID test sites would have you just pull up, crack your window, you do a swab and you hand it over and they test, right? Well, I used that same model where people would drive up to my house, crack their window. I'm in full PPE, gloves, jacket, mask. I was suited up, and I would take your impression through the window, throw it into a bag of bleach, and then disinfect it, and then make your Grillz, and you'd get it in a week or two. And, the riots in LA kind of slowed us down a little bit, but we were in full swing and in full business when everyone got all that unemployment money. And there wasn't enough designer or expensive stuff on the shelves to meet the needs once everyone got all that money. All those SBA loans and everything that people were running hustles on and figuring out, like, we were open for business. And not only that, I got my first little showroom. I took my business from a spare bedroom in my apartment to majority of my apartment to a small little studio space that was, I think I did the measurements, it was like 235 square feet. And now through scale and through time, now I'm in a 4,000 square foot studio showroom in the same building, first floor. And I have, like we mentioned for stylists, all these designer clothings and all your needs. So if you're an artist, you come to my studio, I've got you ready for your press run, for your stage wear. I've got shoes, I've got coats, I've got jackets, clothing. I got it all. I also still sell art. So I've got a lot of the gifts from those artists I work with, like Damien Hirst and Causes are hanging. There's a gift from Murakami hanging in my space. And, some other up and coming artists are all hanging on the walls, and some really established ones as well.
Let's go back to Murakami. We kind of got taken off that story.
Oh yeah.
You go up to New York.
Yeah.
Return his priceless possession
at Kai Kiki
that his callboy stole from him.
Yep.
And you spent $6,000 at a pawn shop for it. You bought yourself a flight to New York to return it to this great artist you looked up to, and they said, "Thanks very much. Get the fuck out. Have a nice day."
Yeah.
What happens next?
The owner of that gallery that had offered me that business opportunity, I should say I was dating a young artist who had just graduated college, and she was chosen out of 25,000 submissions on YouTube for the next big art, who's the best artist on YouTube. And she pretty much won first place out of 25 that were selected out of 25,000 submissions. And she was exhibited at every Guggenheim museum worldwide, 4 locations. And there was this big YouTube biennial, this big thing. And her art was very provocative and changed actually the DMCA takedown notices, because Google and Disney had to figure out how to make it work for her work to even be exhibited, because she used Disney footage and combined it with rap culture. That artist that girl that I was dating and managing, she had got the attention of some galleries in LA. And when the opportunity to work in LA presented itself, I first said no, because I'm from Miami. I love Miami. I have my shows going on everywhere. But then they said, we'll double what you're making in Miami. And I still said no. They came back with more and more offers until finally it was like, we'll pay you 5 times what you're making in Miami, plus relocation, plus a percentage of sales at our gallery. And you'll be working with Murakami's team and everything else. I was like, all right, well, this is too good to be true. I had to shut down a solo exhibit in Miami. I had to bring back my artwork from a show in LA, New York. I had shows lined up for the next year. And I kind of put my entire life as a photographer on pause to become this creative director for this Murakami Made Cafe art gallery in Culver City. And that's how it came to be that I was now in LA. Because of this whole Murakami thing, it really got me. I mean, that was worldwide news, like this Murakami ring being found in a pawn shop and being returned. Like, it made big headlines because of the price tags, as artwork usually is, making news surrounding its money. And that was the door of opportunity that I walked through. Like, just being here. I'd always had this West Coast as a goal. Like, growing up listening to Tom Waits and hearing Going Out West, like, that song is so catchy and tells you they got money over there, there's opportunity. And Hollywood has always depicted it as like the land of opportunity.
So do you ever come face to face with Murakami and talk to him about returning his ring?
He literally stops whatever the fuck he's doing and beelines it straight to me whenever he sees me. And there's many photos online of him and I at different events throughout the years, where at his show at Blum and Poe Gallery in Culver City, parted the seas of people trying to get his attention to give me a hug. And we have a photo that's on his Instagram of us.
But did that good karma moment pay off specifically?
Oh, a million timefold. Absolutely. Yeah, because those photos were like the credibility. The Murakami photos were really a big thing for me in the art world, because everyone understood that, like, Murakami posting a photo with me. It's not like I posted it on my Instagram. He posted it on his. He was giving a talk at the very first event that the Broad Art Museum did was a talk with Murakami where they showed his film Jellyfish Eyes. And he interrupted his talk to introduce most honest man in America, David Tamargo. Like, I don't need a business card anymore. Like, this thing was being broadcast live on
I think just
websites.
To give everybody some reference on who Murakami is, especially like a lot of the people who might be watching and listening.
Yeah.
If you think of a camouflage Louis Vuitton bag, like from back in the day, the Louis Vuitton Keepall bag is like the traditional duffel bag with Louis Vuitton. That's called the Keepall. Usually they retail, if it's a standard Keepall, probably about $3,600. Mm-hmm. So when that collaboration came out, the Louis Vuitton with Murakami, you could buy that for probably, maybe they marked it up. Maybe it was about $5K. Those bags are probably going $25 to $50K now, right?
And they started something, is what's the more important thing. They started what we're still seeing to this day is these artist collaborations on this scale. The Yayoi Kusama, the Alex Israel, all these huge collaborations. Virgil. I mean, it paved the way.
Cool. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to get back to a moment. Mm-hmm. You get nothing for returning this ring. Mm-hmm. What was the first moment that you met and discussed this with Murakami?
At Blum and Poe, 2013. I think it was like a March or April. He had a solo show, so all of his work is selling for millions of dollars on the walls. And Murakami came up to me and talked to me. And then to follow that up 5 years later, it's Gagosian Gallery in Beverly Hills has their biggest show of the year the weekend right before the Oscars. And Murakami, once again, is having his huge show. And I just had like the last 5 years of trying to do art and nothing really sticking, right? So it's 2017 and I'm there in the room and Murakami is with, on his right side, Pharrell, on his left side, Ben Baller. And Murakami pulls me by the jacket up to him.
Who's Ben Baller?
Ben Baller is, at that time, Ben Baller did the chain, the biggest jeweler in the world. Okay. Like, he is huge. He's he is the name that people associate with hip hop jewelry at that time. Ben Baller had just done this like multi-million-dollar Murakami character as a chain. And Murakami was just presented with it and put it on. And Pharrell is there, and he's now the creative director of Louis and everything. And Pharrell was definitely high in fashion at that point. This event, it was crazy because I got access to be at this event with like all the A-list celebrities. I'm pretty sure it was public, but I did get an invitation to be there. And Murakami pulls me up, and he sees I used to wear these Alligator Jesus pins, those little two-headed alligator pin. And Murakami is wearing this like $1 million chain. And he says, "Oh man, I want another one of those." I had given one to him before, and I put it on his lapel. And I put my chain, my little pendant on his lapel, my little pin. And he turns to Ben Baller and Pharrell and says, "This is David Tamargo. He's the best jeweler in the world." Thanks. Okay. So that's the introduction he gives me. And that's on my Instagram. You'll go, if you scroll down to like that 2017 era, you'll see I have a photo of me of Takashi Murakami, and it's me putting the pin on him and hugging me, and it's Pharrell and Ben Baller right there. And it's really cool because that was a big moment for me. That was right when things were really falling apart with, like you said, like how you pivot. I had pivoted out of filmmaking because my friends had really screwed me out of every deal with filmmaking that I'd ever done. I had worked with friends in Miami, tried to foster this community of filmmakers that we all tried to really create cool, unique Miami stories. And out of that came this movie called Moonlight that my friends produced. And I'd worked on the first project where we introduced Terrell McCraney and Barry Jenkins, the writer and director of Moonlight. And we all know it went on to become this really big film. Well, these producers that were on this film, they're like, "Hey, David, we're doing this thing with Barry and Terrell. We need cars, we need locations." And I was helping out my producer friends to find all the stuff that they needed. I was pretty much a fixer, which is like an associate producer on film. And I said, "Okay, do all this. I'll do all this work for you. I just want an associate producer credit on this film." Because at the time, it was like a $217,000 budget film. It was not big. They told me they had no budget. So I had to like literally rely on favors and get friends to loan cars for the production for free. And when it came down to the movie getting its credits and everything in distribution, people like me got cut out from having our names on the credits because that comes with points, which is residuals, which is payments on the back end when the film sells or does well in theaters. And that film went on to become Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, et cetera, et cetera. It's now film history. That film about, a true Miami story, a very authentic story of Miami, which was what we had set out to do as a community in South Florida, our group of friends, and they wrote me out. And that's right around the time when Murakami introduces me to Ben Baller and Pharrell. And I'm just like, holy shit, maybe this is my path. And Murakami had told me in 2013, when I showed him a piece of jewelry that I had made, he's like, "Oh, you're not curator, you're jeweler. Do your jewelry." And he had told me back then. And then here we are 5 years later, and he's like, "Are you doing your jewelry?" "Ben, Pharrell, best jeweler in the world, David Tamargo." And I'm like, fuck, Murakami is really like seeing something in me. He's really encouraging me to do jewelry. And that's probably about when I dug my heels into doing the Grillz.
Do you have a retail shop or a workshop?
I do. I have both. Yeah. I have a showroom in downtown LA that, because of Kanye, we had to really rethink of how we had to structure ourselves.
Yeah, tell the Kanye story. I like that one.
Yeah, that was funny. I was in Hollywood and I got a phone call at 8:20 p.m. Now my building that I work out of is an 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on the weekdays, factory building where things get made. It's not like a pretty building. It's not clean. It's like a dirty, like manufacturing building. And it doesn't have a need to be a nice front-facing place. And I chose that building to start my showroom and everything because it's exactly where I was making everything. And first floor to 14th floor, everything I need to do is in that building, everything I need to make. And I get this phone call at 8:20 p.m. after the building is closed, and this producer on some music video tells me, "Kanye wants you to bring all your jewelry to set." I'm like, "Excuse me? How do I bring all my..." First of all, how does he know? So through the Lil Nas X stuff that I was doing, people working in the production knew who I was and had seen me bring jewelry to set before, and they needed a jeweler on set. And Kanye was about to shoot. They just finished recording 4 hours prior this song with Alicia Keys and Fabio Foreign, and they were hype, and they were going to shoot the music video tonight, and they needed jewelry. So I had 40 minutes to get from Hollywood to downtown and then to some warehouse in downtown with all the jewelry in my showroom. And that was a lot of stuff. So I had to like literally bribe the door guy, get in an Uber because he was already on his bus home. And he unlocked the building for me. And we went upstairs. I threw all my jewelry into like travel tubs, like from Home Depot. And I took, a few $100,000 worth of jewelry and stuff to a warehouse. And there was very little information involved. And yeah, sure enough, Kanye pulls up hours later and they're shooting this music video, and I get to put jewelry on Alicia Keys. I put some earrings on her, some diamond rings. Fabio wears some chains and stuff. And Kanye and Fabio really wanted a Richard Mille. Not just any Richard Mille. They wanted this like $2 million watch that they had already asked the one person that owned it in California, and he had said no 4 times to them. But it's about your network and who you know. So I told him I needed it for it. And since I was there on set and it was me, he trusted me. I had to pay a few $1,000s for his armed security to come with that watch. And like, there's armed security at the gates, armed security at the trailers, armed security on set, and somebody that was at all times watching. And, yeah, he puts on the watch and he goes like this. Nice. You know what he does? He goes like this with his coat, covers the watch. Doesn't even show in the music video, but he's wearing it under the sleeve just to know that he's wearing this thing. It was kind of wild. It was so wild. But, it was just one of those moments. It's a Kanye story, right? But I used that money that they paid me. They ended up paying me over $10,000 just to do that, pull up with all your stuff. Mm. And that's what I used to expand to get to the next showroom. I used that as a deposit and everything to build out the next showroom. So I went from a small space to a bigger space. And now I'm in this, space that I've spent a year building out and, hundreds of thousands of dollars to make it this beautiful showroom that has everything I need to operate 24 hours. And I'm ready, if I get a phone call at any time, to jump on a plane and go to whatever celebrity anywhere in the world and execute.
You get a lot of foot traffic to your showroom?
It's by appointment only. So you can send me a message, DM, email. We have a number set up, a Google number, and people can make an appointment. But I like to filter like people. I don't want people just walking in.
If you had a gun to your head, like someone in your family needed a $10 million surgery and you had to make money immediately, what platforms do you use right now that would drive the most amount of sales? Is it Instagram? Is it kind of outreach? Is it more wholesale relationships? Like what are you using right now? Because obviously I know that, being an artist and a business person are different parts of the brain.
Oh, yeah.
And it's tricky.
So for something to that effect, it'd be really hard to sell one $10 million thing, right? And I'm never going to make $10 million off a $10 million
What's
sale.
the biggest single ticket that you've ever had?
Over $1 million. Yeah. And
custom
NDAs.
Custom pendant?
I signed a lot of NDAs. And there's a lot of people that don't want people to know the value of what they're wearing.
Right.
So, but I will say, yeah, I've sold $1 million thing. But, I'll take it back to your question. It's much easier to sell 10 million units for $1 or
Sure.
even 1 million units for $10.
Got it. Volume game.
Volume game is where it's at. And something that I've learned from the underground, which I learned with Insane Clown Posse and then now working with Ghostmane and Suicide Boys. I'm wearing Ghostmane's record label. That's what I'm pointing to. These guys hold now the records that I guess ICP used to hold for merchandise sales, right? And I've seen, I don't know if these numbers are public, but I've seen Suicide Boys on a 24-day run make close to $10 million in merch sales. Like 24 days on tour, 10 million. Like that's not even.
So your brain would say, who's got the big audience? How can I supply something at a wholesale price?
Absolutely.
Got it.
Absolutely. How can I supply something at a wholesale price, sell 1 million units at $1 profit? Who cares?
Got it.
Most jewelers don't look at it like that. That's why I get calls back all
And
the
if you
time.
need cash in hand, you'd get a purchase order with something up front.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Absolutely.
What was the moment where you're like, I'm gonna do this for life?
Getting my neck tattoo. I did not.
What happened before, like, where you're like, okay, this is me? Like, was it Murakami saying like you're the best, or like who made you make that choice where you're like, okay, this is it. This is what I'm gonna do.
Pandemic, man. It's sad to say that like the pandemic was the best thing that ever happened for me, but it was. It really woke me up to not relying on other people or finding jobs to work, but rather me putting in the work on myself. Because like I had mentioned with that movie, I got written out of the history of it. I got the emails that say, thank you, David. We could not have done this film without you. But what does that do for me? I can tell this story on a podcast, but I can't, I went to the Academy Museum and I saw Barry's Academy Award for Best fucking Director in a display case. And I'm like, I was producing that film. All those producers, I saw them on stage. And every one of those dirtbags, brushed me to the side.
So the pandemic really made you be like, I'm going to work for myself.
Yeah. And then, who I met during the pandemic who helped? And it was a big moment, was meeting Dame Dash.
Mm-hmm.
Dame Dash has changed my life because he's a very outspoken, very, very strong, opinionated person. He's very polarizing. People either love him to death or hate his guts. And, it's because he's so real, I feel. Like people aren't ready to hear his message. And I've seen a lot of videos on Instagram of people recanting what shit they talked about him 10 years prior to like, damn, it took me 10 years to actually hear what he was saying and to understand his message. He's one of these guys that can really activate people. And he activated me because I had a lot of one-on-ones with him. Again, visiting him at his studio, making his grills for him, then going to his house to make adjustments, being at his house when Kanye was coming by and just being introduced to his network and getting all the phone calls from people that are in his friends network that, now that's when I was in the studio, blah, blah, blah. This sounds shitty, but this is what I guess people want to hear, right? I got a call and I got asked to go make some grills for a girl and her husband, and it turns out being Bianca and Kanye, and he's at his studio. And Steve Rifkin is in there, who is one of the early pioneers of hip hop. I don't know if you know Big Pun and all these big hip hop artists. Steve owned the record label that put out all these records, Wu-Tang and all this. And I'm in the room with him and he's talking about, he's about to get married. He's got, all these needs for jewelry, and I'm talking to his future wife and I'm designing grills for her. And Steve is telling me about this beautiful piece of jewelry that his friend gave him. And he pulls out this piece from under his shirt. And I was like, oh yeah, check out the words written on the inside. I made that. How powerful is that you're in a room with all like the biggest players in a movement of music, and this guy's showing me this like treasured piece of jewelry, and oh yeah, I made that. You're wearing something I made.
That's a massive flex.
Such a flex.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. Everyone's jaw was dropped. They're like, fuck.
I was actually in a billionaire's home the other day in Miami, and we were kind of both kibitzing about what we do.
Yeah.
And I was speaking about what I do, and he said, oh, hey, do you know Veronica? And I said, yeah, she's a client. I FaceTimed her and she picked right up. And,
oh yeah.
I mean, now I've got social proof with this guy, and
yes.
He texts me and we have that's a cool moment.
Those are great moments. And I live for those moments where they're natural. They're not forced. It's just a byproduct of being a good person and good at what you do, that, people will say your name and share your name in a room. And that right there is just everything to me.
Man, if that success didn't happen so fast and so quick, or it didn't happen quick, but like if you weren't as successful now, would you still grind on the jewelry, or would you be doing something else?
I would. This brings me the most joy right now.
Yeah.
It really is such a fun part of of my existence here. And I feel like I've found, who else would it take to like say, this is so-and-so, best jeweler. How many more times? No. I was at Burning Man last year. It is another fun story. And I was in the middle of the Deep Playa. The Burning Man is a festival that happens late August, last weekend, and it has no service. It's like no trace left behind. People are out there just living in the moment. And I was on a little mushrooms out in the middle of nothing, and I get a text message, and it's an assistant, an executive assistant saying, Madonna needs you in New York in 2 days. She needs you here. And I was like, well, if you can get me off the playa, I'm in the middle of Burning Man looking at the man right now. If you can get me out of here, sure, say less. Madonna figured it out, and Madonna got me to New York within 48 hours. I was in her home in New York, in her bathroom with her adjusting
Burning
grills.
Man's in the middle of the desert in Arizona, right?
Yes.
Okay, so tell us the exact route that you traveled from the desert to JFK or LaGuardia, wherever you got to next.
Yes. So
helicopter, small plane, bus, where'd you get?
I had someone that was coincidentally leaving the next morning. So I said, let's make this easy and a sure thing. I can get on that car and get out. Because logistics are...
Where'd you go, Phoenix Sky Harbor? Or?
Oh, I went straight to Reno.
Okay, Reno.
And they got me a plane to LA because I needed to get my tools from my studio. I was in my studio for maybe a few hours, then went home, got a fresh change of clothing, and went straight and caught a red eye to New York.
Easy enough. Where'd you fly? JetBlue? American?
I think they flew me Delta.
Delta one, okay.
Yeah. So it was a Delta red eye. Got into New York at 7 a.m., went to Brooklyn and grabbed breakfast at one of my favorite spots, and now I was at M's house at 9 a.m.
Man, you meet all these celebrities. Would you say they're happy?
Absolutely. People like Madonna are the happiest they've ever been. They live in a constant state of ecstasy and gratitude and acknowledgement of like the life that they have is a blessing. And that's what's great is like there's some of these artists that are everything you would expect them to be.
Yeah.
To be at their level. And people like Em, she can read you and read your energy the moment she meets you. It takes her seconds to really get a feel for you. And she was great because our first meeting was very natural. She had arranged a dinner. Fencer, I forget his real name, but he's like a world champion fencer, like fencing. Nadia Lee Cohen, who's an amazing photographer. She had like a solo show at Jeffrey Dite. She shoots all the editorial.
I love her.
She's great. Mm-hmm. Who else was there? Tizo Touchdown.
I think I saw that photo of you sitting on that dinner.
Yeah.
Ken's got a pretty disciplined morning routine. He does his exercise. He does his cold plunge. He probably meditates and all that stuff.
Yeah.
How about you? Are you all over the place, or are you kind of OCD with like a routine in the morning?
I make my morning espresso, my coffee. I hang out with my cat. I put in time to really think about what I'm doing. And there's an artist that I love. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's great for me to bring him up. Miguel. You familiar with that artist, Miguel? Pretty horny music, really good. But he posts every single day on Instagram the same story. And he puts this 527 frequency. And it's a little mantra or a little statement of like, what is it that you desire? Think about it. Take a deep breath. This is a abridged little thing. But like, take a deep breath. Think of what it feels like. Think of what that is like for yourself. Exhale. Do that a few times and really consider what you're doing to attain that desire.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but how could you verbalize what the real value an iced out grill is to the end user?
The confidence. Teeth are something that I've in my line of work, I see not many people care about their teeth, right? Not very many people go the route of Ken and get veneers and correct or, really put the attention to it. And there's so many things that can go wrong with your teeth that will then affect the rest of your body. And the value about your grills is that you become now even more hyper aware of your teeth. And I think that more than anything will lead people to a healthier lifestyle. If they're aware of their teeth and their grills, they're going to brush their teeth more. They're going to floss more. They're just going to care about themselves and their appearance and their physical appearance. And I know from meeting highly successful people that they care about their well-being. Their health is their value. Their health is their wealth. It's a corny cliche, but having all this money does not matter if you're dying of something that was out of neglect or your own fault.
There's a guy, Dr. Daniel Amen, who's known for brain scanning. And I was driving once and I listened to an hour-long podcast that he did, and something I'd never thought of. I hadn't gone to the dentist in a decade. I was just afraid of it. I just became an adult and said, fuck that, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Listening to this podcast, there was a part where he's talking, man, your teeth are so close to your brain.
Yeah.
When you have cavities and bacteria that's infecting. After that podcast, I think within the next week, I was back for my first checkup in a decade.
Yeah.
Whatever cavities I had, I booked appointments. I got them drilled out of my head. And I don't know if it was placebo, but good things happened after that. I felt
Absolutely.
better.
Yeah. I go every 3 months to get a teeth cleaning from a great dentist here in LA, who I found during the pandemic. That's when I started caring, because I found she had a Groupon. $35 was all it took. I was like, are you kidding? I've got money. $35. What's the fear of going to the dentist? Go on Groupon. If I can leave everyone with a message, go on Groupon, find a dentist, get a teeth cleaning. Start right now with having better dental hygiene, because like he just said, it's the gateway to all these other things getting better in your life. Yeah. It's such an important small thing. And, clearly we take it for granted that our teeth are just in our skulls, but they can fall out. And once you lose your teeth, you're really at a disadvantage. It's funny.
Man, we have all these artists and creative butterflies here. Yeah. I always wonder what makes how did you never see yourself work a 9 to 5, or how did you?
Oh, I did it.
You did it?
I did 9 to 5.
But how did you break out? What makes you different to the rest of the people?
I really thought about getting fired, right, as the best thing that could happen to me. Because in love and any relationship, when you get a breakup or you're kicked out, it means it wasn't meant for you. It wasn't suited for you. And the sooner it happens, the better off you are. Because if it's not your truth, if it's not what you're supposed to be doing, if it's not your thing, then, the sooner the better you can get out of there. And to go back to Dame Dash in 2020, me really deciding, I got the tattoo after Dame Dash. I was committed to being myself, and my neck tattoo says Alligator. And I didn't really think of what the repercussions were going to be of doing something so out there. And it was about just acceptance of who I was and putting that on my throat chakra, on myself, to understand, okay, this is who I am.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest repercussion is not being yourself, not following your dreams. Yeah. Being stuck in a job that you don't like, and a life that you don't love, and a partner that you pretend to be. And I think I just always wonder what makes people so courageous and so brave to not follow what everybody else is doing. And does it come from trauma? Does it come from resistance against it? And then why do you have the courage and somebody else does not?
There was a trauma I suffered that is kind of funny. And I was the youngest store manager in the history of Walgreens, the convenience store here in the US. And I was 18 and I was a store manager for an entire store with, dozens of employees, pharmacy, everything. And I had to do pharmacy training and everything so I could be in that area and everything. And I started getting bounced around from store to store. And there was a moment, this is in Miami, and I started getting moved to stores that they get grades based on their efficiency. And they didn't move me to F stores. They moved me to E stores, or G stores, terrible stores that every hour that they were open, they were losing money because of shoplifting, internal theft, and then whatever. And I befriended this one really terrible store staff because they were just kind of going through it. And this pharmacist had a situation where, let's just say what it is, a drug addict reached over the counter and grabbed some controlled prescriptions and left a blank check and ran out the door. And now if he doesn't submit a payment for this, it was her prescription bottle, but if he didn't submit a payment for it, he would lose his license. But then he couldn't submit a blank check. So he had to just do a little squiggle and submit it. And he did it. And of course, that person said that they never wrote that check. It wasn't their signature. And then this guy who had studied for a decade to become a pharmacist, was supporting his entire family and his entire extended family, was about to lose everything and not just not be able to work at Walgreens, but not be able to work at any pharmacy in the US. So I took the fall for that. And that was my choice, to take the fall for this person's mistake and for that drug addict just doing that. And the district manager and the regional manager came because they had all these high hopes for me to be like the next guy. And I've still shaved my knuckles because I was being groomed as like an executive for Walgreens. They really saw this track and trajectory for me to become like this high level person at Walgreens. And they cashed me out right then and there after I signed a paper that I said I was going to take the fall for it. They cashed me out. They clocked me out and cashed me out my paycheck right there and said, thank you very much. 5 years of working at Walgreens, and I was gone.
Man.
And I realized that working for anyone else, they can do that at any moment. You're an expense or an expendable part of their business.
Yeah.
And that was the trauma that led me to understand that as long as I worked for anyone else, I would never achieve, my greatness, because it's not me. I'm living or succeeding for someone else's dream. It wasn't for me.
Yeah. I think, you're the best example that like you have to follow your dreams. You have to work for yourself, and you put the pandemic and turned it into something really beautiful, which is always the case because things are not bad or good. There's always potential, and you're just a great example also to like put in that hustle and put in that time, because like you think, you make the Grillz and then suddenly you're with Bad Bunny, but it doesn't happen like that.
No.
You have to put in the work. I love what Andy was saying, that like you've been doing this since 20 years.
Yeah.
So you really know what it takes to be in the position that you are right now.
Yeah.
I've been doing Candy Can only for 9. I'm about to do it for 10 years.
Yeah.
And this was so beautiful. And thank you so much for being on here and sharing all this information.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Man, and thank you,
Andy. Pleasure speaking with you guys.
Yeah. And we'll see you next time.
See you guys soon.
Perfect.